They were never holding your hand to walk with you. They were holding you back so you wouldn't walk without them. That realization hits differently when you finally understand it. The people you thought were your circle might just be your cage. The ones you were loyal to, they were comfortable taking your loyalty for granted. They loved your light, but only when it served them. And the moment it shined too bright, they tried to dim it. This isn't bitterness, it's awareness. It's the awakening of your soul. It's the moment you start to feel the weight of carrying people who were never meant to be on your journey in the first place. Let me tell you something powerful. You are not obligated to keep making space in your life for people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. It's time to let go, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. And the sooner you understand that, the more peace you'll have in your life. Your time, your emotional presence, your attention, these are precious, limited resources. Yet so often we treat them like they're endless, like we're obligated to give and give just because someone asks or just because someone is familiar. But you have to begin treating your energy like it's expensive. Because it is. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open for anyone to walk in and help themselves to your possessions. So why do you keep leaving your emotional door wide open for people who do nothing but take and leave you emptier than before? It's not about being cold or distant. It's about being aware. Aware of who drains you and who fuels you. Aware of how you feel before and after every interaction. When someone enters your space, do you feel lighter or heavier? Do you feel seen or invisible? Do you feel energized or exhausted? Your body and your spirit are constantly sending you signals. But if you're not listening, if you're too busy people-pleasing or playing the role they expect, you miss the truth that's right in front of you. There are people who only come to you when they need something, not when you need help. Not when you're struggling, not when you're silently screaming for someone to just notice. They only appear when it's convenient for them. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that occasional attention for real care. But real care is consistent. Real care checks on you even when it has nothing to gain. Real care asks how you're doing without expecting anything in return. You might think you're being kind by always saying yes, always being available, always keeping the peace. But ask yourself this, who's keeping peace for you? Who's pouring into you the way you pour into them? Who's checking if you're okay after all the times you've been their emotional support, their sounding board, their motivator? The hard truth is a lot of people are addicted to what you give, not who you are. And if you stopped giving, they'd stop showing up. That's not friendship, that's a transaction. Sometimes the most painful realization is that people you thought were close to you were only close to the benefits of knowing you. They loved your generosity, but they wouldn't know what to do with your boundaries. They loved your smile, but they had no idea how to handle your silence. They were comfortable taking, but never invested in giving back. And the longer you let them stay, the more they start believing they have a right to your space. But the truth is, you teach people how to treat you. Every time you let someone walk over your boundaries, you're telling them that your comfort doesn't matter. Every time you accept crumbs of effort, you're telling them that you're okay with being an afterthought. Every time you silence your needs for their convenience, you're building a relationship where you're the only one doing the work. There comes a point where you have to reclaim your time, reclaim your space, reclaim your voice, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You start to see the difference between someone who loves you and someone who just loves what you do for them. And when that happens, you begin to make different choices. You stop replying so quickly. You stop offering emotional labor for people who would never do the same for you. You stop prioritizing those who only see you as an option. It might feel unfamiliar at first. You might feel guilty. You might even miss the chaos because when you've been surrounded by people who take from you for so long, peace can feel unnatural. But peace is where your power lives. Peace is where you remember who you are when you're not trying to earn love through service. Peace is what happens when you finally put your needs on the table, too. This shift doesn't require confrontation. It requires clarity. You don't have to announce your boundaries with a megaphone. You simply live them. You don't explain your distance. You create it. You don't chase anyone. You let their absence reveal their intentions, and in doing so, you protect your energy like the rare, powerful force it truly is. You weren't put on this earth to be someone's emotional dump yard. You weren't born to be the backup plan, the second choice, the convenient listener. You're not here to be everyone's safe place while you're secretly suffering in silence. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve care without condition. You deserve to feel seen, heard, and valued, not just used. People who genuinely care about you will notice your silence. They'll check in even when they're busy. They'll show effort without being asked. They'll make space for you in their lives because they want you there, not just because it's easy or beneficial. It all starts with honoring yourself. You have to believe that your energy is sacred, because once you do, you'll stop offering it so cheaply. You'll stop proving your worth to people who are blind to it. You'll stop explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds. You'll stop handing over access to your heart to people who treat it like it's disposable. And when you make that shift, when you finally treat yourself the way you've always wanted others to treat you, that's when your entire life begins to change. Loyalty is a beautiful trait, but when it's given to the wrong people, it becomes your prison. Many of us were taught that loyalty is the highest virtue in relationships, that sticking by someone no matter what is a sign of strength, honor, and love. But the truth that hurts the most is this: sometimes loyalty is the very thing that holds you back from your own growth. You stay too long in places you've outgrown. You tolerate behavior that drains your soul. You shrink yourself to keep the peace, all in the name of loyalty. And you call it love, but it's not love when it's one-sided. It's not strength when it's slowly destroying your spirit. There's a difference between being loyal and being used. There's a difference between sticking around because someone deserves your presence and staying out of guilt, fear, or familiarity. Loyalty is meaningful when it's mutual, when both people are showing up, respecting each other, growing together. But when you're the only one trying, the only one sacrificing, the only one carrying the weight of the relationship, that's not loyalty. That's self-abandonment. You see, the hard part about being a loyal person is that you naturally see potential in people. You remember the good moments. You believe that if you just hold on a little longer, they'll change. You make excuses for their behavior because your heart is wired to care deeply. But just because someone has potential doesn't mean they're going to live up to it. Just because you saw a spark once doesn't mean there's still a flame. Sometimes the person you're loyal to is only surviving because you keep pouring into them while they give nothing in return. And eventually, that empties you. You keep showing up, hoping your loyalty will inspire them to match your effort. But you have to understand, people don't change because of your loyalty. They change when they want to. They grow when they choose to. Your loyalty can't fix someone who isn't willing to look in the mirror. It can't heal someone who isn't interested in doing the work. And the longer you stay trying to fix, to carry, to wait, the more you delay your own healing. You may think you're being noble, but what you're really doing is settling for a version of love that doesn't see you, hear you, or protect you, and you convince yourself it's worth it because you're afraid of what comes next, being alone, starting over, facing the truth. But none of those things are scarier than staying stuck in something that doesn't feed your soul. Being loyal to someone who doesn't reciprocate your loyalty will eventually chip away at your self-worth. You'll start questioning your value. You'll start believing that love means tolerating pain. You'll start normalizing emotional neglect and calling it commitment. People often say, well, I've known them for years, as if time should determine loyalty. But time means nothing if growth isn't happening. Time means nothing if the dynamic has become toxic. You don't owe someone your peace just because you've shared history. You owe yourself a future that isn't weighed down by dead-end connections. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone you love because staying is costing you too much. Being loyal to the wrong people teaches you one of the hardest lessons in life, that love alone is not enough. You can love someone deeply and still have to let them go. You can care with your whole heart and still recognize that the relationship is unhealthy. You can want to see the best in someone and still acknowledge that who they are right now is hurting you. That duality is real, that pain is real, but so is your responsibility to protect your own well-being. Your loyalty should never come at the cost of your mental health, your joy, your dreams. If being loyal requires you to silence your voice, hide your feelings, or live in a constant state of emotional confusion, it's not loyalty, it's bondage. And that bondage keeps you tied to a version of yourself that isn't thriving. It keeps you anchored in a place where you were only ever meant to pass through. It keeps you hoping that if you just love harder, if you just hold on longer, things will change. But sometimes the only change that will truly bring healing is you choosing yourself. You have to recognize when your loyalty has turned into a cage. You have to see when your love is being weaponized to keep you from leaving. You have to wake up to the reality that staying in something unhealthy doesn't make you loyal. It makes you stuck. And you weren't created to be stuck. You were created to evolve, to grow, to shine, to experience relationships that uplift, empower, and pour into you as much as you pour out. Letting go doesn't mean you never cared. It doesn't mean the memories weren't real. It simply means you finally learned the difference between giving someone a chance and giving them your life. It means you've stopped confusing suffering with love. It means you've realized that true loyalty starts with being loyal to yourself, to your peace, your healing, your worth. And once you understand that, you stop letting guilt, history, or fear convince you to stay where your soul no longer belongs. People don't always show who they are through words. In fact, most of the time, it's not what they say, it's what they don't do that reveals everything. Inaction is often louder than any excuse or explanation. It's in the unanswered messages, the forgotten promises, the moments you hoped they would be there and they weren't. It's the silence that screams when you needed support the most and got nothing. The painful truth is people reveal themselves by how consistently they don't show up. And yet we continue to hold on to the illusion of who we wish they were instead of accepting who they are. You notice the patterns. You see who only calls when they need something. You see who never asks how you're doing unless there's something in it for them. You see who disappears when things get hard, but always finds their way back when life is easy again. And you excuse it because you want to believe in the good in them. You justify their absence with reasons they never gave. You pretend their lack of effort isn't personal, but deep down it is personal. Not because you aren't worthy of love, but because they aren't capable or willing to give it. You end up overthinking every small interaction. Did I say something wrong? Am I being too much? Should I reach out again? You turn their neglect into your self-blame. You forget that consistency doesn't require effort when someone truly cares. When people value you, they don't leave you in confusion. They don't let you question where you stand. They make you feel safe. But when someone is emotionally unavailable, when they're only present in moments that benefit them, they'll never give you the clarity you crave, and their inaction will keep sending you the same message. You are not their priority. But instead of accepting that, you try harder. You give more. You lower your standards just to keep them around. You become addicted to potential, to memories, to fleeting moments of connection that feel so rare they convince you to hold on just a little longer. You think that if you're more understanding, more forgiving, more patient, they'll eventually come around. But the reality is, your effort can't replace their lack of interest. Your loyalty can't heal their emotional absence. Your love can't force them to care. You have to stop interpreting indifference as mystery. Silence isn't always deep. It's often just a lack of care. If someone goes days, weeks, or even months without checking on you, they're showing you where you stand in their life, and you don't need to dig for deeper meaning in that. When someone wants to be a part of your life, they will make it known. They'll put in effort. They'll show up. They won't leave you constantly questioning your worth. It's hard to face. It's hard to admit that the person you cared about doesn't care the same way. It's hard to stop fighting for someone who isn't fighting for you. But what's harder is continuing to live in a state of emotional starvation where every little gesture from them feels like a feast when it's really just crumbs. You weren't made to survive on crumbs. You were meant to be seen, heard, valued fully, not occasionally. People's true colors always surface when it's inconvenient for them to care. When you're struggling and they're silent. When you express your needs and they get defensive. When you ask for consistency and they disappear. That's the truth staring you in the face. And ignoring it doesn't change it. You can only pretend for so long before the weight of unmet expectations becomes too much to carry. You owe it to yourself to stop begging for the bare minimum. You owe it to your heart to stop romanticizing someone's potential and start acknowledging their reality. You owe it to your peace to stop letting inconsistent people occupy permanent space in your life. If someone's absence causes more pain than their presence brings joy, that's not love. It's confusion. And confusion is not the foundation of anything healthy. You've probably spent so much time waiting for someone to come through that you forgot how to come through for yourself. You forgot that your time is valuable. Your presence is a gift. Your love is a rare thing. And if someone doesn't recognize that, it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to stop giving them chances they don't appreciate. Your peace will come the moment you stop hoping someone will change and start accepting who they've shown themselves to be. No more excuses, no more false hopes, no more emotional limbo. Let their inaction be your closure. Let their silence be the answer. Let their absence remind you of the power you have to walk away from anything that doesn't make you feel wanted, loved, and respected. There comes a time when you have to stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. No matter how pure your intentions are, no matter how much you try to clarify, justify, or make someone see your heart, some people will only ever hear what they want to hear. They'll twist your words, misread your silence, and paint their own version of your story that has nothing to do with the truth. And if you keep trying to convince them otherwise, you'll end up losing yourself in the process. You'll exhaust your spirit trying to win over people who have already made a decision about you. Not based on facts, not based on real understanding, but based on their own wounds, biases, and lack of emotional maturity. There's a certain freedom that comes when you realize you don't have to prove yourself to anyone who doesn't value clarity. If someone really wanted to understand you, they would ask, listen, and reflect. But the ones who constantly misinterpret you aren't looking for understanding. They're looking for confirmation of the narrative they've already built in their minds. You could speak with honesty, act with integrity, and love with all your heart and still be misjudged by someone who is too blinded by their own projections to see you clearly. And that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. You don't need to defend your character to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. You don't need to keep re-explaining your boundaries to people who never intended to respect them in the first place. You don't need to justify your growth to those who preferred you small, silent, and easily controlled. Your evolution will always threaten those who benefit from your lack of self-respect. The moment you start honoring your voice, your needs, your peace, you'll see who was really in your corner and who was just comfortable with the version of you that didn't challenge them. And here's the truth that many don't want to admit. Some people thrive off your confusion. They like keeping you in a space where you're always trying to prove, fix, or earn their love. It gives them control. It feeds their ego. It keeps them from having to confront their own shortcomings. So instead of meeting you in a space of mutual respect, they keep moving the goalpost. You're always almost enough, but not quite. You're always just misunderstood, but not worth the effort to understand. And you stay in this loop, hoping that one more explanation, one more heartfelt message, one more moment of vulnerability will finally make them see you for who you are. But they won't. Not because you're invisible, but because they refuse to open their eyes. You don't need to waste another ounce of your energy explaining yourself to people who aren't emotionally mature enough to hold space for your truth. You don't need to keep performing emotional gymnastics to earn empathy from people who lack compassion. Your peace should not be held hostage by someone else's refusal to grow. The moment you realize that some people will never meet you where you are is the moment you stop shrinking yourself to fit where they are stuck. Your energy is better spent building the life you want, surrounding yourself with people who get you without long paragraphs, who feel your heart in your presence, who ask instead of assume, who listen instead of react. These are the people who deserve access to your vulnerability. These are the ones worthy of your truth because they don't make you feel like a burden for having feelings. They don't weaponize your honesty. They don't twist your intentions. They create safe space, not confusion. You can't force someone to respect what they've already decided to dismiss. You can't make someone see value in something they've never taken the time to truly explore. And when someone makes it clear that they're not willing to meet you with understanding, your silence becomes more powerful than your explanations. Your distance becomes louder than your pleas. Your peace becomes the boundary that speaks louder than any defense you could ever make. When you stop explaining, you start reclaiming. Reclaiming your time, reclaiming your energy, reclaiming your dignity. You begin to realize that not every battle is worth fighting, especially when the other person is fighting to be right, not to be kind. Some arguments are traps in disguise, designed to drain you, not to bring resolution. Some discussions are just invitations back into the chaos you worked so hard to leave behind. And sometimes walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. You don't owe everyone access to your inner world. Just because someone demands answers doesn't mean they're entitled to them. Just because someone misunderstands you doesn't mean you're obligated to correct them. Let them misunderstand. Let them create their versions. Let them talk. While you stay grounded in your truth, while you continue to grow, while you keep showing up as your highest self, not to prove anything, but to live in alignment with who you really are. There is a silent war that happens inside people when they feel they're constantly being tolerated rather than loved. It's subtle, but it's soul-crushing. You start to notice the difference in energy, the way people speak to you, the tone they use, the frequency of their presence. You start to feel like an obligation, like someone people keep around out of convenience, not because they genuinely want to. And that feeling begins to wear on your spirit. You question your worth, you shrink your needs, you start editing your personality just to stay acceptable to the people who barely notice when you're gone. Being tolerated instead of loved is one of the most painful forms of emotional invisibility. It makes you feel like you're too much and not enough at the same time. When people truly love you, you don't have to chase them. You don't have to beg for attention, explain your value, or earn your place in their lives. Real love seeks you, it includes you, it chooses you without hesitation. But when you're only being tolerated, everything feels like a performance. You become hyper-aware of how you talk, how you laugh, how you express your feelings. You hesitate before being vulnerable because deep down, you know they're not really listening. They're just waiting for you to finish. You can feel when someone's heart isn't present, even if their body is in the room. That disconnection becomes a wound you carry in silence. The danger of being tolerated is that it teaches you to accept less than you deserve. It normalizes emotional neglect. You start thinking it's okay when someone doesn't return your calls, when they forget important things, when they only show up when it's convenient. You excuse it because at least they're around. But just because someone is physically present doesn't mean they're emotionally invested. You're not meant to be a background character in your own story. You're not supposed to beg for the bare minimum. Yet so many people remain in spaces where their light is dimmed because they fear being alone more than they fear being half loved. You can always feel the difference between someone who is truly excited to be around you and someone who's just being polite. The way they respond to your wins, the way they handle your pain, the way they engage in your dreams, these are all signs. People who love you deeply will make room for you, not just tolerate your presence when it fits into their schedule. They will remember the things that matter to you, support your boundaries, and make sure you feel emotionally safe. But those who merely tolerate you, they'll show up with half-listening, distracted eyes and emotionally vacant words. And slowly, you'll start hiding pieces of yourself just to stay acceptable in their world. When you are constantly in environments where you feel tolerated, you begin to disconnect from your own identity. You forget what it feels like to be celebrated. You lose touch with the parts of you that shine. You stop dreaming boldly. You stop expressing freely. You start operating in survival mode, avoiding rejection, staying small, and craving crumbs of affection from people who never intended to give you the whole loaf. And in doing so, you abandon yourself in the name of keeping others comfortable. But here's the truth you must confront. It is not your job to convince someone to love you fully. It is not your responsibility to shrink just so someone can feel okay with your presence. You are not meant to be a burden. You are not a project someone needs to fix or manage. You are a whole human being, deserving of love that doesn't come with conditions or disclaimers. The moment you stop settling for being tolerated is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. Because love should feel like freedom, not tension, like warmth, not obligation, like belonging, not endurance. Sometimes we don't even realize how much being tolerated has affected us until we meet people who truly see us, people who light up when we enter a room, people who listen with their hearts, people who remember the little things, who stand by us when it's inconvenient, who challenge us to be our fullest selves. And when you meet people like that, it becomes painfully clear how little you were receiving before. That contrast is awakening. It pushes you to reevaluate every space you've been in and ask yourself a difficult question. Was I ever really loved here, or was I just being tolerated? Choosing to walk away from people who only tolerate you isn't easy, especially when they're family, longtime friends, or romantic partners. The history, the emotional investment, the shared memories, they all make it hard to go. But staying will cost you more than leaving ever will. It will cost you your peace, your identity, your joy. The longer you stay where you're not truly seen, the more invisible you become to yourself. And maybe that's the scariest part of all, not losing other people, but losing you. That's the price of staying where you're merely tolerated. Did you know? Studies in emotional neglect show that people who consistently feel unseen in their closest relationships often struggle with chronic anxiety, low self-esteem, and a deep sense of unworthiness. Proof that what we tolerate slowly becomes what we believe we deserve. There is a silent internal cost that comes from holding on to people who stopped choosing you a long time ago. The weight doesn't show up all at once. It creeps in slowly, day by day, in the little disappointments, in the conversations that feel one-sided, in the efforts that go unnoticed. You keep giving your energy, your care, your presence, hoping, maybe even praying, that something will shift, that they'll finally see your worth, that they'll wake up and remember how valuable you are to their life. But deep down, you already know. You know when someone's heart has drifted. You feel it in the way they stop reaching out first, in the way their words grow shorter, colder, in the way they show up without showing up fully. That unspoken withdrawal is a form of loss we rarely acknowledge because it's not marked by a breakup or a goodbye. It's marked by silence, distance, and emotional neglect. You keep holding on because the connection used to feel good, because the memories were beautiful, because there were moments of laughter, of vulnerability, of what felt like love. You're not wrong for remembering those moments. You're not weak for still caring. But the truth is, memories can't sustain a relationship. Sentiment doesn't equal effort. And love, real love, doesn't vanish when it's inconvenient. Love stays consistent even when life gets hard. But when someone truly stops choosing you, when they no longer put in the effort, when they stop showing care, you're left holding a version of the connection that no longer exists. And the longer you hold on to that, the more you lose yourself in the waiting. It's tempting to think that if you just do a little more, send that one message, make that one phone call, plan that one thoughtful gesture, they'll come back to who they used to be. But people don't respond to love they've stopped valuing, and you shouldn't have to keep proving your worth to someone who once promised to never forget it. It's not your job to drag a relationship back to life when the other person has already emotionally checked out. It's not your responsibility to carry it alone. One-sided effort will always lead to burnout. And no matter how big your heart is, you can't carry what was meant to be shared. The hardest part is not the absence of love. It's the presence of doubt, the uncertainty, the confusion, the way you start questioning if you're expecting too much, if maybe your standards are too high, if perhaps this is just what adult relationships look like. But deep down, you know You know what mutual care feels like. You know what it's like when someone wants to stay in your life. You've felt that before. And what you're experiencing now is not that. What you're experiencing is emotional detachment disguised as being busy. You're being fed excuses instead of presence, and you're being emotionally starved in a connection that once felt full. Letting go isn't giving up. Letting go is honoring the truth. It's recognizing that your love deserves a home, not a battleground, that your heart deserves peace, not emotional guessing games. When someone stops choosing you, they create space for you to choose yourself. And that's the most powerful choice you can ever make, to choose your well-being over someone's inconsistency, to choose your peace over someone's silence, to choose your growth over someone's comfort. The pain of letting go is sharp but temporary. The pain of holding on is dull but endless. It erodes your self-worth little by little, until you're so wrapped up in proving your value to someone else that you forget your own. You forget what it feels like to be prioritized. You forget what it feels like to be deeply cared for without having to beg for it. You forget what it's like to be chosen, not out of guilt or convenience, but because someone truly values who you are. There will always be moments when your heart wants to reach back out, to try again, to give them one more chance. That's natural. Love doesn't just disappear overnight. But healing begins when you start responding to reality, not potential. Potential is dangerous when it keeps you anchored to someone's could be while ignoring who they are. You deserve a connection that shows up, not just one that shows promise. You deserve someone who chooses you, even on the days when life is messy, even on the days when it's hard to love, even on the days when effort requires sacrifice, because that's what you would do for them. That's what you've already been doing. So now it's your turn to choose, not them, not the past, not the maybe, but you. Choose your peace. Choose the kind of love that doesn't keep you waiting. Choose the kind of relationship that feels like a safe space, not a silent battlefield. Because when someone stops choosing you, it's not the end of your worth, it's the beginning of your healing. And the moment you finally let go of what no longer chooses you is the moment you create space for what will. There comes a moment in your journey where you have to stop looking outward for your value and start recognizing that your worth doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. People will project their own fears, insecurities, and limitations onto you and try to make you feel small, inadequate, or unworthy, not because that's who you are, but because that's all they can see through the lens of their own brokenness. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing them. You'll start doubting yourself, questioning your path, and holding back your light just to fit into their narrative. But the truth is, your worth is not something that can be given or taken by anyone else. It's not up for debate. It doesn't fluctuate with someone's opinion. It's constant. It's inherent. It's yours. When you place your value in the hands of others, you give them power over your identity. You allow their praise to lift you up and their criticism to tear you down. You become dependent on external validation to feel secure, to feel seen, to feel enough. But the moment that validation is withheld, or worse, turned into rejection, you begin to spiral. You start molding yourself to fit their expectations, hoping to earn their approval again. But in doing so, you lose the essence of who you really are. You become a watered-down version of yourself, more concerned with being liked than being authentic. And the longer you live like that, the more disconnected you feel from your true self. The world will constantly try to assign you labels. It will try to tell you what you're worth based on how you look, how much you earn, how productive you are, or how well you fit into a system designed to keep people insecure. But none of those things define your true value. You are worthy not because of your performance, your popularity, or your productivity. You are worthy simply because you exist. Because you are a living, breathing soul with a heart capable of love, growth, and transformation. That alone is enough. That alone makes you powerful beyond measure. There will always be people who underestimate you, people who dismiss your ideas, ignore your presence, or make you feel invisible. not because you lack something, but because they are limited in what they're capable of seeing. They can only recognize what aligns with their comfort zone. They can only celebrate what mirrors their own version of success. So when you show up as something different, when your energy is too vibrant, your confidence too strong, your vision too big, they shrink you. They label you as too much, too ambitious, too sensitive, too intense. But those labels say more about their capacity than your truth. And you don't have to shrink to make others feel comfortable. You don't have to dim your light just because it exposes someone else's shadows. There's a certain freedom that comes when you finally decide to validate yourself, when you no longer wait for someone else to affirm your gifts, your beauty, your strength, when you stop asking for permission to be who you are. That kind of self-ownership is rare, but powerful. It means you can walk into any room knowing that you belong, not because someone invited you, but because you chose yourself. You chose to believe in your own voice, even when others doubted it. You chose to stand in your truth, even when it made others uncomfortable. You chose to honor your soul, even when it meant walking alone for a while. You were never meant to beg for appreciation from people who are blind to your magic. You were never meant to sit quietly in rooms where your energy is only tolerated, not celebrated. You were never meant to doubt your reflection just because someone else couldn't see your brilliance. The problem is never your worth. The problem is who you're allowing to define it. And sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to walk away from environments that refuse to see your value and find spaces that recognize it without you having to explain. When you anchor your worth within, no one can take it away. You become untouchable in the best way. Not because you don't feel, but because you no longer crumble under someone else's rejection. You know who you are. You know what you bring, and you don't need applause to prove it. That kind of internal power allows you to move with grace in the face of dismissal. It gives you the courage to say no to disrespect, to set boundaries without guilt, to pursue your goals without waiting for consensus. Because you are no longer living to be chosen. You are living from the truth that you already are. Some people will walk out of your life, not because you did anything wrong, but because they were never meant to fully see you. And that's okay. Let them go. Their inability to value you doesn't change your value. It only reveals that their vision wasn't wide enough to hold you. You are not for everyone. And that's your strength, not your flaw. The right people, the right spaces, the right opportunities will never require you to be less than you are. They will reflect back the truth you've known all along, that you are already enough, already worthy, already whole. Healing begins the moment you decide to no longer carry what broke you. It doesn't require the other person's apology, their understanding, or even their acknowledgement of the pain they caused. It starts within, quietly, powerfully, when you choose to stop reliving the wound and start reclaiming your peace. You may never get the closure you wanted. You may never hear them say the words that would make sense of it all. But closure was never about them. It was always about you. It's the point where you stop letting someone else's actions dictate how you feel about yourself. It's the moment you understand that you can't wait for healing to come from the same place your hurt did. We spend so much time looking back, analyzing, overthinking, trying to find the moment where everything went wrong. We obsess over every word, every silence, every shift in behavior. We ask ourselves questions we'll never get the answers to. Why did they change? Why didn't they fight for me? Was I not enough? But healing doesn't live in those questions. It doesn't live in the past. It lives in the decision to accept that what happened, happened, and that it no longer has the right to define you. You are not the person they left. You are not the version of yourself that tolerated less. You are not the one who had to beg for love, for attention, for effort. You are who you choose to become after it all. People who hurt you may never understand the damage they did, and they don't have to. Forgiveness doesn't mean they were right. Forgiveness doesn't mean you let them back into your life. Forgiveness means you no longer give them control over your peace. It means you choose to be free, even if they're still stuck. Carrying resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to suffer. You deserve better than that. You deserve to feel light again. You deserve to move forward without dragging their weight with you. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is realizing that healing isn't about pretending you were never hurt. It's about learning to live fully even after you've been. Your scars don't make you weak. They make you real. They show that you survived, that you felt deeply, that you had the courage to love even when it wasn't returned. And that kind of heart is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of, because in a world that tries to make people numb, you stayed soft, you stayed human. That's strength. There will be moments when the pain resurfaces, when a memory sneaks in, when you hear a song or see something that reminds you of what you lost. Let it come. Feel it. Then let it pass. Healing isn't a straight line. It's not a destination you reach and suddenly everything is fine. It's a choice you make every day to not let your past steal today's peace. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you'll feel like you've let go, and other days it'll feel like you're starting over. That's okay. Progress isn't perfect. What matters is that you keep moving forward. One of the most freeing realizations is that closure can be created, not given. You can give it to yourself. You can decide that the unanswered questions no longer matter. You can choose to stop seeking validation from someone who couldn't love you the way you deserved. You can say this chapter is closed and mean it, not because they said so, but because you did. You take your power back every time you release the need for someone else to make it right. You take your peace back every time you stop replaying the pain and start focusing on your healing. It takes strength to sit with your own pain and not let it harden you. It takes courage to keep your heart open after being broken. But that's how healing happens, through honesty, through acceptance, through radical self-compassion. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep showing up for yourself, one breath, one step, one moment at a time. The more you choose yourself, the more you'll realize how little you needed their permission to move on. You'll see that the closure you thought you needed from them was really just your heart asking you to choose peace over pain, freedom over familiarity, and growth over grief. The people who hurt you are not the authors of your story. They were just a chapter. And that chapter, no matter how painful, doesn't get to define the rest of the book. You do. Your future is not tied to their presence. Your happiness is not waiting in their apology. Everything you need is already within you. Healing is yours to claim, not when they make amends, but when you decide it's time. Time to stop reopening the wound. Time to stop defining your worth through someone else's inability to love you. Time to begin again, lighter, wiser, and more grounded in your truth.